Welcome to Practical Programming Episode 2. So today we're going to talk about variables. So now that we've got everything installed and we're staring at this blank piece of paper here, you may wonder, what even is code? Right? What does that even mean? What are we going to write? And fundamentally, code is just combinations of math and logic. So you can do math on things, and you can make logical decisions on those things. That's all that is. So what we're going to start with is we're going to start by just talking about the bare bones concept of variables. So let's say I want to do, I'd like to do some number equals some other number plus b. So I've got this is a generic way of representing this equation. I want to say that c is equal to a plus b, right? And I'd like a way of having a, b, and or a and b variable. That's the word variable comes from. I want to be able to change them, make them whatever I want. So what you do is you type the name of the variable equals, and then I'm going to initialize this, right? So I pick a number. So I've just said that I want a to be 5 and b to be 5, and then I want c to be whatever a plus b is. And if I run this, it doesn't output anything. So let me introduce you to something called a print statement. If I type print and then in parentheses and I put a c, it will display the value of whatever this is in the window down here. So if I click run again, so we can see here c is 10. So all variables are ways for us to represent numbers in our code. That's really it. So once we have numbers in the code, we can do any math operations we want on them in the code. And we just use standard math symbols. So we've got 5 times 5 is equal to 25. That's the time symbol. You can subtract. 5 minus 5 is 0. You can actually raise things to powers with double star. So 5 raised to the power of 5 is 3,125. You can do a little bit of trickery here by doing 1 over it. And so this will be taking a fifth root of 5. And you see here, this is the fifth root of 5. So actually, I will prove that. If I raise this to the fifth power, I should get 5 when it prints. So there you go. So this is kind of the math side of code, and on the surface, this might not seem super useful. It's just kind of a calculator, right? And that's exactly what it is. It's a calculator, but you can do all kinds of stuff. For example, I can take something called a modulus, which is it's like a remainder. So this is saying, okay, I want to do a divided by b, and I want you to tell me the remainder. So if I make b7, I make a5. 5 divided by 7 is 1 with a remainder of 2, right? So c should print out 2 here. If I run this, it's 5. Let me think about this. Oh, no, there's no remainder. This would be 7. I did it backwards. There you go. So 7 divided by 5 is 1, remainder 2. I had that backwards. So you get a 2 here. So this is a way of getting a remainder. It's also called the modulus. Those are the main math functions. I should probably talk about order of operations. Now, so when I'm assigning a variable, I don't have to use just variables. So I can do a mixture of variables with numbers. So let's say I do modulus of a and b times 2. See, we've got 4. So this is 2, is this result times 2. So the order of operations, just like your math class, is going to be PEMDAS, which stands for parentheses, exponentiation, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. So what that means is parentheses come first, so we got parentheses here, and then anything raised to a power, so that double star, will operate second, and then multiplication, and then division, then addition, and then subtraction. So if I have something that looks like this, I'll just do numbers now. Actually, you know what? No, I'll do variables. Let me see. There we go. So if I have a minus b times d to the power of, we'll do e, e to the power of d, because we don't want to do 3 to the 10. That's a big number. So with this, according to PEMDAS, the exponentiation is going to go first. So this is going to be 10 cubed, which is 1,000. Okay, that'll get multiplied by 5, so 5,000. And then it's going to be 7 minus that. So when we print C, it should be like negative 4997, something like that, 993. There you go. So boom, just like that. Now, if I put a parentheses here, it's going to be totally different. A minus B will get evaluated first. So we'll have 7 minus 5 is 2. And then the exponentiation will go. And so we should get 2,000. So there you go. You get 2,000. So you have to understand this order of operations here. Other than that, that's essentially all you need to know about variables. They store data. For now, I've shown very basic data types. I guess I should talk about, there's something called a data type. A number is not just a number. When you're talking about code, a number is not just a number. There's several different data types. There's something called an int, which stands for integer. So those are whole numbers. Something called a float, which is a floating point number. It means decimals, essentially. Something called a double, which is a decimal that's more precise, right? It uses a little more memory. There's things called longs, which I don't believe are in Python, actually, and are not really relevant. There's things called strings. There's characters. There's even more, but there's objects. But I'm going to talk about this in a whole separate video. But so these variable types are pretty important because they'll affect the things that you'll get in terms of the responses to your math. And I'll talk about strings and chars here really quick. So my string, and so there's a rule with Python. Your variables can be anything that you want. Just don't start it with a number. This will not work. It can have a number in the middle of it. Just you can't start it with a number, and that's a very common rule in most programming languages. But you make a string by doing 2 quotes, and you type out what you want, right? So my string, hello there. If I print my string, hello there. Look at that. And then there's chars, which is, it's like a string, but it's only one character. So just, I don't know, H, right? My char. And you notice I use single quotes, not double quotes. So we print H, right? So these are floats. These are strings and chars. Objects, I'm not going to talk about. Int, so what does it mean? Like I said, it's a whole number. So that may seem not particularly interesting, but it is. So let's say I have 2 integers, right? So by default, these are doubles. When you just type, b equals 5, it saves it as a double. That is a default data type. That's why we can get decimals. Well, if we don't have decimals, and we're dealing purely with ints, now actually I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen here, because there may be some casting going on, and if that happens, this will be a great explanation. But if not, what I would expect to happen, because these are 2 ints, right, and they can only be whole numbers. So since they're whole numbers, 7 over 5 is some decimal number, but it's a whole, so it's going to round down to 1. And okay, so that's not what happened. So here's what happened here. So when I do a divided by b, what's happening is the result is being cast. Okay, so what that means is converting this number into a double after it does it. If I want to ensure that it stays an int the whole way, I need to cast it back to an int. If I run this again, I get 1. See? So, so casting is essentially where you type the variable type you want, and then you put the number in there, right? So if I have 5, if I do float 5, this will convert this to a float. I can also do double 5. Oh, I guess double is not an option here. Double, I think float is synonymous with double in Python. In other languages, float and double are separate. Float takes up less memory usually, but in Python, I had forgotten. Float and double are the same thing. So there is no double precision float. That's what double stands for. There's only floats, and that just means decimal. Float means decimal. That's all you need to know. So you have to cast the result. So if I divide these 2 ints, it's gonna automatically cast it to a double, because the default in Python is double precision floats. But if I cast it to an integer, it essentially rounds it, right? And there's other ways to round, but this is a way of rounding as well. That covers most of the basic variable types. And so now we know how to do variables and we know how to do math. In the next video, we'll talk about logic and how to do logic. All right, see you then.